You've probably seen the headlines, "Government spends billions on a statue," or "Trillions wasted while debt skyrockets." And people lose their minds. But here's the twist. Every country you can think of is in debt. India, Germany, even super-rich Switzerland. Japan owes more than double what it produces in a year. The US try $36 trillion and counting. Sounds like a disaster, right? But what if I told you debt isn't always a bad thing? Why don't countries just print more money? Who are they borrowing from anyway? And is it even possible for a country to be debt-free? Let's break it all down. No jargon, just the truth. Welcome to Simplified 101. Section 1. What is national debt? When you hear the news say, the US is $36 trillion in debt, what does that actually mean? Well, that's called national debt, also known as public debt, government debt, or sovereign debt. It's the total amount of money a country's central or federal government owes to others. Think of it like this. Just like individuals borrow money when they're short on cash, governments borrow too, especially when their spending outpaces their income. But instead of going to one bank, they borrow from a mix of sources. Other countries, international banks, investment funds, and even regular citizens who buy government bonds. Now, here's something people often mix up. National debt only includes the federal government's debt, not the debt of local states or provinces. So when we talk about the US national debt, we mean only the federal government's, not what California or Texas owes. And it also has nothing to do with your credit card bill or student loans. Personal debt is a totally different story. So now you know what national debt is. But the bigger question is, why do countries borrow at all? Stick around. That's what we'll tackle in the next section. Section 2. Why do countries borrow money? Why borrow money when governments can just print it? Well, if they print too much, it's like giving themselves a blank check. Sounds fun, until the economy crashes. More money chasing the same goods equals prices explode. That's hyperinflation. It's happened in places like Venezuela and Zimbabwe, where money became almost worthless. Borrowing, on the other hand, keeps governments in check. Debt comes with interest, so they can't go wild. It forces them to think twice before spending. So why exactly do countries borrow? Here are the main reasons. 1. To cover budget deficits. Governments earn money mostly through taxes, but sometimes it's just not enough. If the government makes $3 trillion but needs $4 trillion, that $1 trillion shortfall has to come from somewhere. Cutting services. People protest. Raising taxes. People suffer. So they borrow. 2. To invest in growth. Imagine never building new roads, schools, or hospitals just to avoid debt. That would hurt everyone. Borrowing lets countries build now, grow the economy, and pay it back later with the extra tax income from that growth. 3. To handle emergencies. When disaster strikes, like wars, earthquakes, or pandemics, governments need money fast. In 2020, the US borrowed $3.8 trillion for COVID-19 relief. Without that, the economy might have totally collapsed. 4. To pay off old debt. Yep, just like people refinance loans, countries do too. They borrow to pay off older, more expensive debt. If done right, it's smart. If not, think Sri Lanka in 2022, it went bankrupt. 5. To manage inflation and interest rates. Sometimes borrowing is a tool. Governments issue bonds to either pull money out of the economy, to fight inflation, or inject money into it, to boost growth. Section 3. Who lends money to countries? Governments borrow trillions, but from where? There are 3 main sources. 1. Domestic lenders. You can lend money to your own government by buying bonds or treasuries. You'll get paid back with interest. Citizens, banks, companies, ETFs, even government agencies, like Social Security, can buy bonds. In fact, as of March 2025, about $7.3 trillion, or 20% of US national debt, is intragovernmental, owed within the government itself. 2. Foreign lenders. Foreign citizens, banks, and governments can buy bonds too. Countries like Japan and China are the largest holders of U.S. Treasury bonds, around $700 billion and $1 trillion. Weaker economies don't attract bond buyers due to low trust. Instead, they get direct loans with conditions from global banks like the World Bank or Asian Development Bank, ADB. If that still doesn't work, the country turns to the IMF, International Monetary Fund, the lender of last resort. IMF loans come with strict demands like raising taxes and cutting government spending, which often causes unrest, as seen in Greece, Argentina, and Indonesia. 3. Their own central bank. This is called debt monetization. The central bank prints money and uses it to buy government bonds. Most countries avoid this now because it can cause inflation. Instead, central banks buy bonds indirectly from commercial banks, mainly to control interest rates and inflation. Section 4. Is national debt a bad thing? Not really. Debt can be good or bad depending on how it's used. Used wisely, for public services, infrastructure, and emergency relief, debt can boost economic growth. It can increase tax revenue and help repay itself. But too much debt becomes a trap. When a country borrows endlessly just to pay old debt, it spends more on interest than on healthcare or education. If investors lose trust, they'll stop lending. And then things get really bad. Conclusion. So, national debt might sound scary, with trillions in red ink and headlines shouting crisis, but it's not always a bad thing. Like using a credit card wisely, debt can actually help a country grow, invest, and respond to emergencies. The real danger comes when borrowing gets out of control, or when leaders ignore the consequences. It's all about balance. Now that you understand what national debt really is, you'll see through the noise the next time someone panics over a $1 trillion headline. Thanks for watching. If you learned something new, give this video a like and subscribe for more simple explanations of complex money stuff.